Hi, I'm Alistair, and in this video I'll show you how Dedoctive generates comprehensive project readiness reviews through automated document analysis. For this workflow, we've taken inspiration from Google's Production Readiness Review, which is a formal assessment process that ensures a service or software system is prepared to transition from development to production. We've then adapted this specifically for engineering project readiness. Using Dedoctive's Workflow Designer, you could easily modify this workflow further to be applied in other areas, such as manufacturing assurance or infrastructure planning. I'll go into more detail on our designer later in the video. Traditionally, readiness reviews require experts to manually review vast document collections, identify risks, and assess against readiness criteria. Dedoctive augments this process by intelligently indexing complex data in any format, and then orchestrating the analysis using our hybrid BPMN and agentic workflow platform. This combines the predictability of structured BPMN workflows with the reasoning power of AI agents. And because all outputs are only extracted from the source documents, all elements in the report are fully traceable back to its source. This allows an expert to focus on the analysis and making improvements rather than the collation and formatting of the report. I'll demonstrate these features now. We'll begin on Dedoctive's front page where we can select the PRR workflow and click Start. We're now presented with a form where I'm given a list of projects to select. Each of these are a collection of synthetic documents about an example project in various formats such as spreadsheets, Word documents, and JSON. I'll just select Aegis Falcon and click Send. A report is now being extracted which summarizes various elements of the project. This report is defined in the workflow itself, so the contents and the formatting of it could be easily changed to summarize different properties of the project. After a minute, the report has been generated. Here we can see it's a project readiness review, and there are multiple sections. At the top here we have the product metadata, which gives the product name, the description, and a version. Here there's no version because it's not defined in the document collection, and the product name is Sorted Data Loader, which is one of the services within the project. There's also a quality characteristics section, which provides information about functionality and security, reliability, which contains service level objectives, monitoring, which contains key metrics and alert thresholds, deployment, which has a deployment strategy and rollback plan, then risk assessment, which contains identified risks and a mitigation plan. All of this data is taken from the source documents, and you're able to see this as each section contains a citation section. This specifies where in the source documents the information was taken from, and you can click on this and see the source document itself. For example, here it was taken from this sentence in the document. If I now go back, I can also see an option to explore the response map. If I click this button, this first node in the map shows that this is the risk assessment section. Then this text was used in the response, and this text was taken from this document. And the same can be said for each of these pieces of text. We could also go back and go to a different section, such as monitoring, and explore the response map here. Here we can see a more crisscrossing response map, but you can still see that this text here was taken from this document. And this entity, which is also part of our knowledge model, was taken from this text, which was taken from this document. This gives full traceability back to the source documents for every element in the response. At the bottom, the user form has also changed, giving the user the option to add any comments which will be added as a note and used to update the specified section. I'm going to scroll up in the report, and you can see in the product metadata that the version is missing. As an officer, I may know that this is actually version 1.0, so I can select the product metadata section and say the version is 1.0. If I now send this, this will be used to update the report. I've now got the updated report back, and I can see that the version has been added here, and it's located at the top here. You can also see in the citations there's a new officer's comment, which defines the comment that I added. This gives full transparency of where each piece of information has been taken from. I could keep adding comments here, but once we're happy with the summary and the comments that we've added, I can now click Send without adding a comment, and the workflow moves on to the next section, which is the analysis stage. This takes the summary and analyzes it to determine the readiness of the project. It's important to note that only the relevant references to the source documents and the officer's comments are used in the analysis stage. The summary report produced in the first stage is only a human-readable visualization of the facts present in the source documents. Anything generated by the LLM is purely for ease of use by the officer reviewing the application. I've now got the final report back, And if I scroll to the bottom, you can see that there are two new sections. If I expand the review conclusion section, you can see a summary of the project, and it's also been defined as only being partially ready. It also contains the citations like usual. If I now expand the further action section, you can see some actions that are required to improve the readiness of this project. Now that I've shown how this workflow would be run by a user in the front end, I'll demonstrate how a workflow like this can be edited or created in our designer. This is Dedoctive's Designer, an IDE that allows a user to design and develop agentic workflows which are able to connect seamlessly with Dedoctive's knowledge model features, agents which can use any LLMs, or tools from any MCP servers. I can click Run here to start the workflow, and I'm presented with the same form as before. Once I click Send, you can see each task gets highlighted in the workflow. On the left here in the workflow output, you can see events get received back from each of the tasks, reporting the current state of the workflow. Now that the summary stage has finished, we're now at the task which presents the form to the user. At the bottom left here, you can see the same form as before to enter a comment. This comment form is actually defined in the workflow though. If I go into the review of results task, I can see that it's a user task. And if I go into the user form and launch the editor, you can see that there's an editor to create a user form. For instance, I could create a new element here, expand this, keep it as a short answer, but change the display name to be officer's comment. This change is reflected at the bottom here in this form preview. This gives the workflow designer the ability to define a form to take any input from a user. However, I'll discard this change for now and click cancel. And now if we go back to open output, and I'll click send to Dedoctive to carry on the workflow. Now you can see it's carried on into the analysis section. Now the workflow is completed, we can go in and see the data at any point in the workflow. For example, here I can go to the prepare sections task. This gets highlighted in the workflow output, so we can see it here. And if I expand this and go to the task data, you can see some variables have been set. These are just some setup variables for the overall workflow. However, if I now go to this task after the review results form, which was the form where you get to add a comment, if I expand the task data, you can see that there's this form data variable, which is empty. This to show that the comment was empty, and this moves on to the next stage. If I now go to generate diagram at the end, and open the task data, this is the contents of all of the variables that were made throughout the workflow. This feature makes debugging and developing workflows simple and flexible, allowing for workflows to be created for all kinds of use cases. That's all for this demonstration of how Dedoctive can be used to automate a project readiness review, and how our flexible architecture allows for this approach to be optimized to solve other problems. If you'd like any further information, there are links to videos and our website in the description.